Local subject contrast is important in any photograph, but it becomes especially important in black and white conversions. I'm going to duplicate this layer by hitting Command or Control J, so I'm not working on the original. And I'm going to quickly convert this in the worst but quickest possible way of hitting Command Shift U. It's a keyboard shortcut for basically going up the hue saturation adjustment layer and dragging the saturation all the way down. It's literally doing the exact same thing. So now we see the issue, right? If I turn this eyeball off, here, color is what helps isolate the subject, giving it subject contrast based on its color. So we have these warm starfish against these blue color cast on the sand and the water reflections, from the reflection of the blue sky. But when that's converted to a black and white image, the oranges and the blues are very similar to each other. Now, how about this? You're saying, well, maybe that's so, but obviously this is a tonally flat image. Well, let's fix that. Let me add a levels adjustment layer, and yep, look at this histogram. I've got plenty of whites. Looks like I'm running up against the wall, so I'm losing highlight detail. I'll hold down the Alt or Option key and click on that just to see. Okay, everything that I see is white means it's 100% blown out highlight detail in all the RGB channels. So I'm definitely losing information. Aesthetically, this means our eyes, as viewers, we go to the most sharply focused part of the image or the brightest part of the image first. So right now, our eyes are competing between this sharp area and this super bright area. So we'll have to address that. But we're definitely missing blacks and dark tones. I'll hold down the Alt or Option key and just drag this over. So it looks about right here is where I'm starting to see pure black, right there in the shadow of the starfish, right about here. Okay, so now I've fixed the tonal contrast problem. So now let's convert it to black and white, doing what we did before. Again, Command Shift U lets you quickly see it. If you wanted to add a hue and saturation adjustment layer and drag the saturation slider down, longer process, but it gets you to the same place. Okay, this looks better than this one, right? Because the contrast has been fixed. But there's still a problem with separating the starfish from the sand to make them more dramatic. There's a reason for this. It's based on the Munker-White illusion. Let's pop over to that. So essentially, this is one of the illusions that illustrate how our eyes deceive us based on the relative tonal value of the color next to it. So what I'll do is I'll grab this B layer and I'll just slide this right over. And let me open the info palette so you can mathematically see. So when I hover over the white with my cursor, you see right here, the RGB values are 255 in the red, green, blue channel. I hover over the black, there's 0 all the way down, which is exactly what we would expect. Now look over here. I'm hovering over the gray, and notice this top stripe of gray is all that's being shown from the A column. But notice it's 128 all the way down. The B column is 128 all the way down. Watch what happens when I slide it over. Do you see that? We know that these are mathematically the exact same shade of gray. We're confirming it now, right? 128, 128. But when you put the same mid-gray against black, it appears lighter. If you put the same mid-gray against dark, it appears darker. Do you see that inverse relationship there? So let's pop over. So that's what we need to work with. So I'm going to get rid of all of this by selecting it all and just hitting delete. Command or Control J again. So I'm starting from a fresh new layer. There's a lot of ways to handle this. Depending on the tonal range of the print, this may be a perfect fix. So I'm going to pull down the blues and I guess the cyans. Okay, I like where this is going, but this area still isn't great. And chances are if I pull up the reds and the yellows, I still don't have the contrast that I needed. So let's address that. So I'll click the levels adjustment layer and we've stretched it out, but I'm going to reset the black point to right here where we saw it before. So that's a little better. Whenever you make those extreme adjustments in the color sliders for the black and white adjustment layer, you have to be careful of posterization that we're starting to get. So I don't think I'll go that route actually. So I'll just delete those two layers. Instead, I'll pop over to Camera Raw filter. Remember, so the Adobe Camera Raw dialog box is the same processing engine as in Lightroom. So you can do the same technique in Lightroom. So I'll convert to black and white, still the same issue, right? They're very similar once you convert to a black and white tonal profile. I'll access the black and white mix and hit auto. Okay, it did its own thing. I'm not sure I'd go that direction. I'd probably want to go the other direction. I'm getting that posterization again because typically the blue color channel is starved for information. It's the shortest wavelength of the RGB wavelengths. That's where you always find noise or you always get posterization first, as you probably noticed in your landscape photos with big blue skies. So that's not going to work so much for me. So I'm going to go back to default. I'm going to go back over here and let's adjust just the clarity because this is a good image to adjust clarity. Remember, this is for mid-tone contrast and all of this is mid-tone. So we can really pull that up. This is a nice photograph to actually emphasize texture. So I'm going to emphasize that as well. Now watch the dehaze, which its purpose is to remove the ultraviolet haze for distant landscape shot. It removes a little bit of fog. It also helps with the contrast of the overall scene, making things a bit darker and more contrasty without getting posterization. So I like where that's going. And maybe I'll pull down the exposure just a touch. Okay, I love the sand. Still got the same issue where the starfish aren't quite right. But remember, you can use an adjustment brush and subtract what we did. So if I click on the adjustment brush icon right here, I pop over, it looks like it has sticky previous settings. So I can click on any plus or minus sign and it will reset. So I know I'm going to adjust the shadows. So I'll just click on the shadows. It automatically resets everyone and gives me a plus 25 on the shadow, which is perfect. I'm just going to scroll over, make sure auto mask is on to help me, and I'll paint. Now, if you want to see the mask, you're like, I can't see anything I'm doing. All you have to do is turn the mask on right here, and that'll show you where you're painting. And as long as you see that little red pin, that means it's active. So you can stop and start painting as much as you want. See the auto mask? It's only selecting whatever that crosshair touches. So it does a good job of not going outside. So again, if you don't like that mask color, you can add it so you can see where you've painted on black and white. Sometimes that's a little easier to see gaps that were missed. So you can go back and take care of them. I'm going to turn the mask off. So this is what I've set my mask to. Now I can make adjustments. And this is crazy, but I just want you to see everything we're doing is only affecting the starfish. So I can brighten up the starfish. I can pull up the shadows a little more. I can even add more clarity, texture, and I can dehaze just the starfish just to make them pop out in brightness. I'll click OK. So already this is looking better. I would want to go ahead and address this globally white area that's competing with this. So I'll hit C for crop. Pretty much every image can be improved with the crop. So I'm cropping out that whole distracting thing up there. I like this kind of pano feel. I'll probably pull this over just a little bit, thinking about the rule of thirds. Hit enter, Command 0 to fill.
Nice.
So now we're getting there. We're still not there, but we're getting there. We're emphasizing that local subject contrast. Now that I'm back in Photoshop, I would probably just hit Command or Control J to duplicate it again. And I would check out multiply because that's going to make everything darker. And I like that. A little too much. Remember, Photoshop dials in everything at 100% volume. So just dial it down to taste, toggle the eyeball off and on. Okay, I like where it's going, but I don't want to lose what I had in the starfish. So I'll add a layer mask by clicking on this add layer mask icon. I'll hit B for the brush, make sure that black's in the front because I have to paint with black on a white mask. And here's the brush tool. But again, if you just hit the letter B, it will automatically choose it. And then I'll just paint. Now this doesn't have auto mask. So you see how I'm getting a little outside of the starfish and it's giving a bit of a white halo. So that auto mask feature in ACR was actually fairly nice. Missing it a little bit here, but I can make my brush a little smaller. Hit the X key to swap the default colors and I can come back and clean up my mask wherever I kind of went haloing on the outside of the starfish. All right, so that's even more exaggerated, right? But I feel like I'm starting to now lose a little bit of information here. I'll hit Command, Option, Shift, letter E, and now treat this as its own image. I probably pop back over to Adobe Camera Raw again. And when you do this, everything's zeroed out. So even though we maxed out the clarity or almost maxed out the clarity, we now have the clarity access again. So we have to figure out how gritty we want this. This is an image that can be pretty gritty. Here's why I would try to recover those highlights that were lost right here. That's such a powerful tool. See if I want to open up the shadows just a touch. And I like this. I'd probably just put on a subtle vignette in the effects area, click OK. So now I feel like I have a pretty strong tonal range, but let's take a quick look. Hit Command or Control L. All right, I'm not running up against the wall, right? I haven't clipped my highlights. I have clipped my blacks a little bit, but I'm not sure that I care. Hold the Alt or Option, like that's what I've clipped and that's appropriate. So I feel like we have a nice image.
Nice.
You should always push it further than you think. So I'd hit Command or Control 0 and I would say, let's look at multiply again. Let's go down and look at overlay or soft light. Yeah, I think all of these are a bit heavy handed. I'd probably choose soft light and drag the opacity way down to like 40% or so. And then I would probably come in with a layer mask, hit B for brush, right bracket key for a giant brush, hit X. So my default colors switch back to black. And I would just subtly open this up by clicking a few times. And I'm painting at 100%. So that totally finished everything. So let's go back to see where we started. Before I do that, I'm going to squish everything to the top layer by hitting Command, Option, Shift, letter E. I'll take everything we've done and hit Command, Control G just to get rid of it. Turn this off. I'm going to go back to the original layer. So that's where we started. I'll hit Command or Control J, Command, Shift, U. So that's a default black and white conversion just by desaturating it. So we went from there with no local subject contrast to here with very minimal effort. Now let me show you this one other neat idea. So what if you have this? You've made these very extensive tonal corrections and down and manipulated the local subject contrast to tell the story that you want to tell, watch what happens when I come back down and blend this with an overlay blend mode. Notice how much more powerful that is of an image, even if you wanted it to be just in color. So you have a lot of options, things you can do with your black and white conversions. Local subject contrast modification of the starfish. I may weep for joy. Hey, what are you still doing here? It's over. Go home.
Yes! That's awesome! What? You just took one in the jugular, man! Ha. Whoa! Yes! Oh my god! Oh my god, I did! Is this bad? Is this bad? You should pull that out. That shit is not cool. Pull what out? The dark, man.